Corporation,
I had the intro.
native nonprofit music organization. Funding is
But not
provided
yet.
by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
Partial funding for this program was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting through a grant from Native American Public Telecommunications, empowering, educating, and entertaining through Native media.
KBMF is partnering with Montana Art Beat to host an art show and fundraiser at the Carpenters Union Hall on the final day of our pledge drive, August 15th, from 4 to 7 p.m. Join KBMF and the Montana Art Beat crew for a great collection of local artists and their work. Proceeds from art sales go to support KBMF and the artists themselves. That's the Montana Art Beat Art Show,
I'm ready to go,
15th,
baby.
from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Carpenters Union Hall.
Welcome to my arms.
It's time for Post-Orthodoxy, a show about changing our minds.
With your host, Dark and Ainsley Sevier.
Maybe what they believe about reality
You're good.
isn't all
Oh, I can't see it on my end.
What?
I know.
The video.
We are on a mission to have a better time with more people.
The question is how you get
Post-Orthodoxy explores strongly held beliefs, how those belief systems divide or connect people, and what might be found beyond those reality bubbles.
Keep calm, don't lose your head.
Don't lose your head.
Use a chocolate here with me because I got anxiety about doing this.
Welcome to this neighborhood.
Indeed, welcome to the neighborhood. I'm Ainsley Sevier, and with me in the station today is Citizen DJ Dark Sevier. You are tuned into Post-Orthodoxy, which is a show about changing our minds. It's about getting out of reality bubbles and setting up an outpost in the borderlands for other people who are getting out of reality bubbles. People that maybe think it's a big scary world out there, and if I leave behind the folks that I've been raised with and change my mind about something, then I won't have anybody to love me.
Nobody will love you anymore.
Nobody will love you. You'll be all alone out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning into KBMF LP Butte 102.5 FM. Maybe you're listening on butteamericaradio.org/stream, or perhaps you're joining us on our live streams on facebook.com/AinsleyHelen or twitch.tv/TheSeviers. This is a Post-Orthodoxy Sidecar, which is a short 1-hour episode on current events that we slip into the radio station when I don't have a guest for the Jolly Roger, which is supposed to be a kid co-hosted talk radio show at this time.
Yeah, this doesn't usually happen like this.
No, but I hope that the audience will appreciate the quality content we're going to put out just the same, even though we're both older.
Rather unorthodox event.
Shucks. So I did a bit of a social media blast earlier with our 3 top subjects we're going to touch on today. As we have done for the past few months, we're going to just do a bit of a coronavirus update, talk about what's going on, things that we've learned, and things that we've seen in the world, and maybe just continually open up a space where we can have an attempt at a level-headed and non-moralistic conversation around the science.
You are so out of touch.
Surrounding viruses. And then we're going to close that conversation because we will just talk about it forever. We're going to move on to talking a bit about what we saw when we were in Portland this weekend and the Portland protests and the things going on in the country, which is going to segue very nicely into a conversation about Twitter banning several thousand QAnon accounts. And do you know what QAnon is? And are you aware that people you go to the grocery store with have very different perspectives on the world than you do?
I think that's the case.
Question mark.
It's been my experience. If you talk to them.
Yeah, it's been my experience that people have very different perspectives on the world than I do.
Yeah.
But some people, I think, just sort of, if you have a different perspective than them, they just assume you're crazy. Or you hate people. If you don't have the same morals that I do, you must hate people.
Weirdo. Or you're a weirdo.
Or you're crazy. And the
Tribalism is rough, man.
the people who are not in your specific tribe
Yeah.
actually have very good reasons that they feel are logical, loving reasons for the things that they believe about the world. Yeah, so those are going to be fun. Did you have anything in particular you wanted to bring up in our hour today? It's going to go by like that, and then one of our new KUMF DJs is going to come in and cover for Big Thing C tonight.
Using his radio voice to do radio.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't have anything sparking. I don't have anything sparking right now that I can get out.
Sparking joy.
Sparking words. Anyway.
Sparking the cylinders.
Yeah.
Okay, well then, what's something, in the interest of having a level-headed and calm and non-moralistic conversation about the scientific process and viruses,
I don't know.
what's something that you've seen over the past week that is a result of the U.S.'s reaction to COVID-19?
I'm going to sidestep that question altogether.
Hey.
As a catalyst.
Okay.
I want to say that we've been doing this show for a while. We've been doing it since in the era before COVID-19 came.
Mm-hmm. We started Post-Orthodoxy in September, and before that we were doing 2 years of copacetic conversations with Milkai.
Right, so part of the point of the show is to talk about orthodoxies, is to talk about fundamentalisms, is to talk about dogmas, things that just are.
That's just the way it is, okay?
And then the idea of the post-orthodoxy is like, sometimes I think it's healthy to say, but why? Is it just so that way? And that's kind of the point of the show. So when this COVID-19 scenario unfolded, there was a lot of just so information on the internet. And there was a lot of confusing information. That's what made it really tricky. I think that's...
Contradictory.
There's a lot of contradictory information. So CDC and WHO say, nope, nobody needs to wear a mask except unless you're coughing on people or you're sick or something. Or you're going to go around.
CDC, WHO, Surgeon General, and Anthony Fauci all said you only need to wear a mask if you're ill.
Let's not be crazy about it.
Yeah.
And then a week later, like, no, we're going to be crazy about it. Everybody wears masks all the time. And for all those organizations, because the idea of spreading germs is not new in the COVID era. There's been some science around it beforehand. So
right.
I think a lot of people were destabilized, and all these agencies had a contradictory stance one week to the next. Made it difficult for people to know who's in charge and what the rules are and who do we listen to. And so we lost some, I think they lost some authority. They lost some, the sense that they are the experts that knows what's going on. I think they lost some
rapidly
authority.
changing your opinion without explaining why you're changing your opinion
science,
does tend to make people not trust you.
There's a lot of science nerds, people who are like, not necessarily science nerds, not people who are nerds and do science, but people who have sort of taken on science as a dogma in itself, as an orthodoxy in itself. If it's scientific, then it's fine. And I think a lot of those people came from a Judeo-Christian background.
Well, if I can't trust my dad or God or my pastor, then I'm going to trust science.
Something like that. So, but we have a lot of contradictory science because science is in process all the time. We have a new virus. There's a lot of new information.
It's a question.
So there's no settled science, and yet people were using settled science language for a lot of the memes that were being passed around, which I found I have since greatly reduced my time participating in the Facebook app, and I've gone back and I've been more of a lurker. I stopped making the comment because then you got to deal with the after effects of your comment, which is a lot of people having strong feelings. Because it doesn't seem to be any other way. People have to stay their strong feelings all the time. You have to take a side. You have to be hyper partisan. You have to fight the fight. Blah blah blah.
More and more now, you're a jerk if you don't pick a side.
Right. So I'm that jerk, not picking the side, and so I see a lot of the hyper partisanship, the hyper divide language that's going on, and I find it unfortunate. So
what do you mean you find it unfortunate?
I find it unfortunate that we've come to that. That, I think for a while there was the idea that our friends group could still be friends and discuss topics.
And how?
And now it's no. If you made a statement about a mask, then you are no longer my friend. If you made a statement about my mask, you're my best friend now. You're not. I don't know. Confirm my bias or whatever. And so I feel like the whole fight around the mask is unfortunate because I think it's dangerous that we've gotten so divided on a topic and made it political that should be medical.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of things that we could talk about on this subject. But I wanted to sort of go back and say what my experience has been. Yes, when they said flatten the curve, that seemed to make sense to me. Yes, we should probably flatten the curve so the hospitals can get geared up for a pandemic that we seem to be having. That made total sense to me. And the memes morphed and mutated all over the place. They became humorous.
My favorite was the cattening the curve.
Cattening the curve.
Yes.
So I'm like, okay, let's get on board with it. And then the memes spiraled out of control and they became less scientific, it seems to me, and more jingoistic, more...
What does jingo mean?
Jingoism. I'm gonna have to look it up before I say it. It's like...
Is that something accidentally racist?
It might be, but I don't think so.
Like jerry-rigging?
No. Jingoistic, characterized by extreme patriotism, especially in the form of aggressive or warlike foreign policy.
Huh.
That's jingoistic.
It has to be named after something.
Jingoism?
Yeah.
It's a derogatory adjective.
Okay.
It's meant to be derogatory.
Yeah. See, folks, that's an excellent example of what is possible for you, too. Most people in the U.S. have access to the internet in some way or another, and if you don't know something, you can go know it.
Right, so this became like a nationalistic thing, a mask case.
Right.
And so the point of our show, which is to deal with dogmas, when we started saying, let's look at what we know and what we don't know, and let's look at how to use a mask properly, instantly became, we were characterized as anti-maskers.
Right. If we're not just on board.
Because we weren't just on board, it didn't just say just wear a mask. Okay, just wear a mask where? And what kind of mask? And how should you take care of your mask so that we couldn't have those discussions because there was this fever of the pro and anti, which is just a carryover from the Republican Democrat.
Dogmatic.
Or anti or pro, whatever.
Or Christian versus atheist.
Yeah, or abortion or pro-life or whatever. So I found it really unfortunate. And so we've been talking about coronavirus every week. And even though we're not saying we believe it is this or that, we're saying there's unfolding science, let's look at some sources.
It's called the scientific method.
Right. So I've gotten off of Facebook and sort of spent a little more time now. I'm not really familiar with Twitter, but I'm getting familiar with Twitter. And I'm finding some Nobel laureates and Stanford scientists that are doing
statisticians
stats, and they're looking at the numbers. And the numbers are telling a very different story than what I'm seeing in a lot of the fear-based rhetoric around the mask debate or the shutdown or the close down or whatever. So my perspective is I wanted to help out with the flattening the curve, and then the toilet paper event happened. And then, the panic and the fear. There's obviously some fear. People are hoarding things.
Which is an evolutionarily sound animal response to fear.
Sure.
I am afraid, therefore I will go and make sure my nest is full of all the things I will need to survive.
Right. So that phase.
That's natural.
And then the mask has just become the dominating, what I see as the dominating force. People, they used to talk about deaths, how many deaths were mounting up until the deaths started to fall.
And then they switched over to talking about cases going up.
They just started talking about how the cases were going up even though the deaths were going down.
And the death toll has continued to decline.
So if I were to, and I'll just be hypothetical, if I was going to make a Facebook post saying, from what I understand, we did the shutdown at the peak of the virus.
Globally.
That's what the data is showing.
Yeah, the U.S. is not the only country.
Was peaking when we decided to do lockdown. And according to what I've understood, it's too late for a lockdown at that point.
It's too late for a lockdown in the U.S. When the U.S. started locking down, it was too late.
Right. So the virus is already out there and spread around.
Viruses don't care about country borders.
A lot of people are going to get it, not know it. So this lockdown thing I thought it was unfortunate. So in the way that we talk about it, because we're not talking about the science about it, we're making it a political issue. So, from what I understand, deaths are dropping off, cases are going up. Part of it is more cases, but also part of it is as the virus is normalizing in the herd is building immunity to the virus. So more people will get it.
And that's how every virus behaves on the planet.
Fewer people will die. That seems to be pretty sound science from what I've been watching, from the people that I've been paying attention to. But the memes have like a shelf life or something, and people just get their meme cache, and they collect all the memes about the mask, pro or anti.
And then they keep spreading out those memes.
Keep spreading out, even though there's been new information between the time they gathered the meme and they spread the meme. It doesn't seem like that's that interesting to folks. Like actually what's going on is about padding their bias. Like I have this bias and this meme makes me feel good about my bias, so I'm gonna back for my team and spread this meme. And
well, a lot of people think of
the virus or what's going on in our culture.
A lot of people think of biases as a negative. I'm not biased, but we are naturally biased.
I'm biased.
You can just get to a point where you're more aware of your biases. And you can become, for instance, you can become aware that you have an urge to fly home and be with your family because you're, afraid of the virus, or you have an urge to buy a bunch of toilet paper and food because you're afraid of it. You can become aware of these animal urges, and just like we can be aware of our biases, being biased, as in like, I think my kid is the best violinist in the school orchestra, but of course I'm biased. That you're aware. You're aware that your kid is your favorite, and you're going to think they're probably doing a better job than other people. But also, confirmation bias is something that we all need to be on the lookout for, especially when fear and other primal emotions are involved. Confirmation bias is, I like information that matches the information I already know. Yes. I feel scared when I hear information that contradicts the information that I already know. That's a natural animal response. We like to know that we know our environment and how to be safe in our environment animalistically. And information reacts in our brain the same way as knowing which stream has fish in it and knowing which caves have bears in them. And when you find out that actually this cave you always thought was a safe cave has a bear that lives in it seasonally, you have a fear response because suddenly there's different information than the information you thought was keeping you safe all along. And that's something that's happening with this coronavirus thing is we are all much less aware of our confirmation biases than I think is healthy. And becoming aware that you're naturally going to think that information is more true if it matches what you already know.
Right, so when it goes back to the mask debate, I feel like we could be having informed discussions about masks, how to use them properly, the best use of the mask, and also put it in line with up-to-date information from what we know about the virus, how it's moving, how it's progressing, how it's dying. We know new information now, so we have different. But it seems like a lot of the mask stuff is for mental health reasons. A lot of the talk that we're having about the virus is mental health talk. So like, I think when Montana decided everybody needs to wear a mask now, I don't think that's, in what I've been reading, based on a scientific need as much as it is a political and psychiatric need for people's psyches to feel better that they're not going to get the virus. Even though, if you look at what's going on with the virus, the masks have their place.
They do.
The way we're using it.
Certain kinds of masks worn in certain ways have a certain place where they are actually beneficial.
So, that's where I'm at. My own personal journey has been, hey, maybe we can all be helpful. And then there's this strange horde mob mentality that makes productive conversations impossible, and I've retreated and just continuing to try to inform myself about what's going on and act according to the information that I've learned. So that's where I'm at with the whole.
Science evolves.
It's every day.
Yeah.
I follow this guy named Michael Levitt. He's Stanford guy. I follow him on Twitter because he's, not only is it just him, but people who are arguing with him and his stats. I'm learning a lot from him.
M Levitt _NP 2013.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, biophysics.
Yeah, biophysicist.
Yeah.
Stats guy. Nobel laureate. Anyway, I start finding the smartest people that I can find, and then find the people who are arguing with them, versus me being average intelligence person and people arguing with me.
So how do you know that you're not just seeking out your own confirmation bias of trying to find really smart people that match the way you think the virus is behaving?
Well, one of the things that we talked about week after week was people dying of the virus and with the virus. People who are being clear about those sorts of things. There's a lot of people not being clear about those sorts of things.
Which sorts of things?
Talking about people who died of COVID-19,
Mm-hmm.
when actually the information that they're talking is people who died with COVID-19.
Because of.
Not all the people that we're listing as people who died with COVID-19.
Right.
Died of.
Is the kid who died in a car accident,
That's the
and
famous
the
one.
hospital marked his death as a coronavirus death.
And you can mark that up as to
Which-
an anomaly that doesn't happen very often. However, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who are a little more clearer in the terms that they're using.
Yes.
So,
For instance, how many people have died from the flu this season?
how many people have died from the regular flu? Do you know how many people have died from the
We
regular
went to
flu?
the CDC website this weekend while we were in Portland,
Yeah.
and it seems from the way that the CDC is presenting the data on their website that they are adding up all of the deaths as one statistic.
Flu deaths are being thrown in with COVID deaths. So,
Yeah, on the CDC website. And they do say if you want to sort it this way, you can look at flu deaths but not influenza, or coronavirus deaths but not flu. But the big number that they're putting up is all of the deaths from coronavirus, which could be the common cold or COVID-19 or influenza, all of which are caused by coronaviruses.
Right, so that's the kind of stuff I think I try to be careful not to make sure I'm cherry picking information to fit my bias. The goal is to find out what's going on, not to confirm my bias. Even though I know I have a bias.
Viewers on our Facebook live stream are wondering, where do we see this data? We keep talking about data about the death count going down. Where, like if you're just in a town and you're looking at that town's magazine, and that town's magazine says 500 more deaths today in this state.
Or
right?
MSNBC, which
yes,
is one size fits all news.
People are going to continue to die from viruses, unfortunately, because people die from viruses, especially the more immunocompromised you are, the more likely you are to die from a virus. And that's unfortunate. Right. And I know that might include some people that I care about very deeply.
Right.
And there's nothing I can do about it.
Right. So people say, well, where are you getting your information? Michael Levitt is one of those guys that I get my information, and the daisy chain of comments that come from Michael Levitt. So other people who are in his field, people who are contradicting his information, and him having to defend his position. This is what science does, right?
Right.
So it's this is what I see happening. So that's who I've been getting a lot of my information from, is this Michael Levitt cat and
I shared a link.
Jason's.
I shared a link to his Twitter where he's just sharing a ton of information every week.
The video keeps ending.
And that's unfortunate. We just have to keep rolling along.
Right, okay. We'll just stop then. So I guess it's coming on and going off.
It's okay. I handle that part of things, and then we just keep talking with our folks on the radio. So
Michael Levitt is one guy that I go to. There are other sources, which
I think
part of the reason we do this show is to find other sources.
Well, I think a big part of this, I think a really big, really important thing is the confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Dark and I have our own suspicions based on things we already knew pre-COVID time about how viruses work, about how immune systems work, about how governments work, about how social systems work. We already had things that we knew about how these sorts of things are carried about in society, that when the coronavirus happened, when the COVID-19 plague happened, certain red flags kept going up for us. Like, now wait a second, that's not how immune systems, like for me it was really medical stuff, like that's not how immune systems work. We should be telling people to boost their immune systems, not telling everybody to stay inside, stay alone, stay sedentary, and wear a mask. And then other red flags that were going up for you were things that you know about how governments, governmental and social systems have taken advantage of health crises for political purposes in the past. So these red flags started going up for us, and so we approached our research on the COVID-19 from the perspective that maybe we weren't getting the most best correct information from the mainstream sources. So our confirmation bias was that I think something's fishy here.
Yeah.
Let's go look for some real hard data.
Right.
And other people who maybe don't have those same sorts of red flags that we do, heard that there's a global plague. Maybe they have a sort of a trust in their government, or sort of a trust in social systems, or a sort of trust that healthcare isn't a for-profit industry, or maybe they sort of never really studied germ theory, maybe never really studied the immune system. And so when trusted government and healthcare systems tell them, if you wear a mask, everybody will be better, they believe all the news that matches that information.
Right.
And then those people go look for information like how many people have died from coronavirus, instead of things like what we're Googling, which is how many people have died from the flu versus the coronavirus, or how many people died with coronavirus but didn't have any other pre-existing immunocompromising conditions.
So Michael Levitt just made a post 17 hours ago, and there's a little, he's retweeting somebody named Mark Briggs. It says, one final chart, percentage of COVID deaths broken down by age range shows that 80% of all COVID deaths have been ages 65 and over. The young and healthy have been done a grave and costly disservice this year. And then Michael Levitt comments on that tweet. He says, or he retweeted with this comment, that is for the US and possibly the UK. The rest of Europe, 91% are over 65 years of age. And then he gives you a list of tables showing you the data. He says this makes deaths per case super sensitive to age distribution. Reporting cases without age range is meaningless, and it's still a great way to keep terrorizing us. So that's I have followed Michael Levitt, and then he will post some graphs that are a little too scientific-y for me. I would have to think too much to understand. I could listen to his interpretation, or I could look at the graph and figure out what he's saying. Often I stick around and wait for him to simplify what he's saying, or have other people trying to understand what he's saying simplify it. So a lot of the information that he's doing is not super accessible. MSNBC information is super accessible, although not very reliable, as far as I've noticed.
A lot of it is skewed to match a certain confirmation bias.
Well, it's one size fits all, and it's really about selling Doritos. Like, all the coronavirus health information that you're getting from mainstream media is not there to help you.
It's not there to keep you healthy.
It's there to sell you pharmaceuticals, autos, cars, trucks, snack food. That's the purpose of mainstream news. So I'm a little
and has been for a really long time.
So the point is, even if they give you good information, that's great, but that's not the goal. That's incidental. If you end up getting some good information off of the mainstream news, that's incidental. That's not the reason they're there. They're there to sell Doritos, so on and so forth. Michael Levitt is not selling Doritos. So I'm looking at his information because his
in fact,
motivation,
he was horribly ostracized by his peers for speaking out against those things.
For speaking, right. So that's where I'm getting my information. I'm finding people who are looking at data and then taking all the new data that's coming in that he's found on coronavirus, layering it over what we know about other viruses that may have had spikes, and comparing to see, is this virus way extremely worse than the common flu, or is it the same as the common flu, or is there gradation? These are the kind of things that we're not talking about because of this strange fear hysteria kind of thing going on around.
You know, a friend of the show, Glenn, made a good point on one of my posts last week, which is that he acknowledged that quite possibly there is nuance to whether wearing a mask actually does something for you or for me or in this situation or that kind of mask. However, he said the best thing is just tell everyone to wear one, because it would be way harder to try to get people to make smart choices about when to wear one.
Right, yes.
And I mean, for me, that just keeps coming back to personal immune system sovereignty. Like, I need to know my immune system. I need to know how healthy I am. I need to be in control of, or rather in support of, my own immune system. And if I feel like or know that my immune system is not strong enough to keep a virus from multiplying in my system, then I need to take measures to protect myself.
Yeah, it was pretty Wild West when we drove across Idaho. So restaurants, nobody in the restaurant was wearing a mask, none of the staff was wearing a mask. That's problematic with a bar and restaurant, is you're shoving things in your face the whole time. So
and touching
you
everything.
can't wear a mask sitting in a restaurant.
Yeah.
But even in Montana, people started wearing masks who were working at the restaurant. Idaho, none of that was going on. Nobody was wearing a mask. Nobody. It was like just a regular old summertime in Post Falls, Idaho.
Nobody gave me. It was actually honestly really refreshing after 3 months of dirty looks to have nobody giving me dirty looks.
Because you were standing a block away from somebody on the street and not wearing a mask?
Or like backing away from me when we, like, I could actually hold the door open for people when we were going through doorways instead of them like backing away and holding their children to their heart while I walk through the door and then going through.
So I feel like that Michael Levitt tweet is one of those things. So yes, we know that this virus is disproportionately affecting a very particular segment of the society.
Mm-hmm.
And making it an everybody problem, I think, is doing a disservice to the people who are hardest affected. The thing is like, oh, you gotta do it for the people who are immunocompromised. And I'm like, well, this is what we did with HIV/AIDS, is that we're all going to get AIDS. And when it all shook out, it turns out, no, we're not all going to get AIDS. A lot of us are going to get HIV and not feel any repercussions because we're not in the risk group that gets AIDS.
Right.
So my generation was raised paranoid about kissing people or having sex because you get HIV, even though I was not in the risk group.
And that HIV might kill you, but in fact HIV was dangerous for people who had compromised immune systems because of, for instance, overactive drug use recreationally, or
extreme lifestyles that compromise the immune system.
Unhealthy gay sex. And I don't mean gay sex being unhealthy, I mean
extreme versions.
Unhealthily performed.
Right.
Unsafely performed.
So the story was, we're all going to die from HIV, and then people just stopped talking about it. Even though there were people talking about it at the time saying, this is not right, this is not correct data, the HIV AIDS conflation needs to be looked at differently.
We watched an interview with a doctor from South Africa who was like, so you do know the millions of cases and deaths numbers coming out of Africa are just estimates.
Nobody's actually got.
We didn't actually go to every hospital in Africa and mark down how many people died of HIV and AIDS.
So what's happening now is we're all going to die from coronavirus when we already have data right now showing, no, who's most at risk. We could be taking care of the people who are most at risk. The rest of us can be going on with regard to the people who are in danger.
Create shopper programs.
Instead of pretending like everybody's in danger, we're not all in danger.
Everybody's not in danger, and
we know that now.
You're more in danger if you're anxious and isolated and inside all the time.
And that seems to be what the coronavirus news seems to be doing to people. Ironically.
Those are immunosuppressive activities.
Yeah. So we got used to wearing masks the mask order came down just as we left for Portland. We went to Portland, everybody's wearing masks all the time. Everybody's very aware of the social distancing, the food, the bars, everybody's got it dialed in. They're keeping their distance, everybody's wearing their mask. It's not that big of a deal for me to put on a mask to walk into a store if that's what the store wants. You're gonna go visit your old aunt, you wear a damn mask. You don't want to be the vector. Yeah. Right? So it's not that big of a deal.
I understand that my 80-year-old aunt has a less strong immune system.
Yes.
However, she also worked her butt off on a farm her entire life and has always eaten healthfully and taken lots of long walks. So she's healthier than a lot of other 80-year-olds I know.
Right. So I feel like, yes, we should be having more nuanced conversations, but I'm losing hope that we can do that, it seems.
Well, and I want to, week after week, I just want to clarify, because I'm the mushy lovey person on this show, is like, I do care. I care that maybe one of my little sisters or my baby nieces or nephews will have some congenital immunodeficiency that we didn't know about, and they will get sick and die.
Right.
Or they'll get horribly sick and be in a battle for their health for 3 months because we didn't know yet that they had, that thing.
Right.
Some immunodeficiency, I know that I have a lot of friends who are a lot older than me that I really care about, and that those friends of mine are probably have weaker immune systems than me for various reasons. And I would be really sad if those people got sick and died. And I want everybody to do what they think they need to do to take care of their own immune health and to be safe. And also, I don't think it's everybody. And it's odd in a country that's over 75% Christian and then way more of other religions that also believe in an afterlife, that everybody's just terrified of dying.
And that's ironic too.
But anyway, that was me trying to say, FYI, I'm not heartless.
Yeah.
I know I could be hurt because someone I love could die from complications of viral overgrowth in their body.
We're in an emotional storm here with a lot of fear, and so trying to be calm, clear, balanced, and show some information and have a discussion about it is fraught.
Mm-hmm.
That's been my experience.
If we're being calm and collected about...
we obviously don't care.
We must not care about people.
That's not the case.
We just had to go to Walmart today, and most of the things I saw people wearing on their faces were not things that would prevent anybody from encountering viruses.
So we did get a video from a friend of the show showing us how even ill-prepared and ill-made family mask from your kid's Whoopee blanket is still better than no mask.
As far as keeping sputum from your mouth from entering the environment?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you cough into a mask, your cough stuff stays in your mask.
Yeah.
But we need to shift the conversation away. Scientifically, the conversation should be shifted away from protect me from ever encountering germs, viruses, and bacteria to will my body be a ripe environment for bacteria and viruses when I encounter them, because I will encounter them because I live on a planet.
That's too radical. That's the other thing. People say, where are you getting your information? Well, if your information is based solely on the germ theory of disease, which is the CDC,
which is that you should protect yourself from bad things.
Yeah, if you're just going by that model, then I understand how a lot of that stuff makes sense. I am looking at the bioterrain theory of disease, which says diseases go where they're comfortable.
And we do have a Post-Orthodoxy Facebook page, and we've been busy out of town this week, but I think it's a good idea that when we find something that we feel is scientifically or logically sound, that we share it on that Facebook page so that people can go and read the things that we're finding.
Yeah, I dropped out of the Facebook squabble fest, but I am still
but I do want to share resources.
Sharing resources on the Post-Orthodoxy page. So if you do have a Facebook page and you are looking for other sources of information, or you would like to share your other sources of information, you can always share them with us on the Post-Orthodoxy page.
Yeah. Shall we modulate along to our next topic of conversation?
Sure, do it.
A brief little foray. I'm going to switch them up a little bit because I think we're probably going to end the hour talking about Black Lives Matter and the Wall of Moms.
South Africa's in the house.
Dalizo Butalezi and my friend Mike Bouchard. Thank you so much to everybody for tuning in. So, QAnon.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Many U.S. citizens have not heard of QAnon.
That's true.
Which is kind of surprising to me. But I guess not surprising because more and more we discover as we loop along out in the universe outside of bubbles that so many people are in bubbles and don't realize that they're being...
That's not in my bubble. I'm deleting you as a friend.
I just don't know that.
About that part of the world.
I just don't know.
Right.
Like, the number of liberal friends that I've talked to over the past couple of weeks who are like, but how can people not know that our justice system is racist? I'm like, I didn't know until like 3 years ago. I didn't know that North America was fully populated by hundreds of tribes and millions of Native Americans that were murdered by European colonizers. I thought it was mostly empty.
Nobody had told you in your bubble that was the case.
Yeah, like I think you if you're a not, if you're a white person in the U.S., it's very easy for you to just be interacting with white people in white realms and not have any idea of the racial structures in the country because they don't affect you. You're not in danger when you get pulled over for a speeding ticket.
That's what I saw in Idaho. It was a lot of people unconcerned. I mean, I see a lot of my friends carrying the weight of the troubles of our times.
Which is immunosuppressive.
Right? What's going on with Black Lives Matter, for instance? People carry the weight of this injustice, and how are we going to solve the injustice?
And we should care.
And we should care.
Okay, so my friend Jessica in Missoula wants to know, please do share resources. I'm really serious about this. I really do want to get on board with finding all the things that we've read, because we've been reading a ton of stuff over the past couple of months.
Right.
And I do want to start sharing those on our Post-Orthodoxy.
I will start doing that on a religious
A really
basis.
Great place to start, if you're wondering if you have all the straight facts about the mask thing, is do you know the difference between a bacteria and a virus?
Do you know the function of a virus?
Do you know what actually happens when a virus makes you sick? Do you know how many different parts of your body are involved in your immune response?
We got to do some one-on-one stuff before we start jumping on the mask, no mask bandwagon. We got to do some real one-on-one.
What you know about how viruses and bacteria work in the planet influences whether you think masks matter.
Yes.
Bacteria, virus, and the immune system. You can go to Google, type in immune system, and then click on images, and you'll just find hundreds of charts explaining bacteria versus viruses, and influenza versus cold, and different types of viruses, and how the immune system response works in the body, and things that boost the immune system and things that suppress the immune system.
And when you're looking at it outside of the sort of germ theory is haunted by good and evil theory of the Christian paradigm.
Yeah.
It's haunted with that.
Germ theory comes from this mindset that there are good things in the universe and bad things in the universe, and germs are bad things.
A more holistic approach is that viruses are a part of us. They give us DNA upgrades. They enable us to live on the planet by changing our systems.
And sometimes
if
that means
if you're not being judgmental,
survival of the fittest.
If you're not being black and white and good and evil,
moralistic,
germs, pathogens, viruses have a function, and we live with them all the time.
In the system of the planet.
To separate ourselves from them is to our own peril.
Yes.
So understanding the basis is important. We're going to go to. We've only got like 20 minutes.
Okay, we're gonna crack into it. We're gonna do
I think
5 minutes on QAnon and 10 minutes on Black Lives Matter.
Okay, very good. Go with your QAnon.
Okay, so do you know what QAnon is? QAnon is a group of concerned U.S. citizens who believe. And I'm straight up. I'm being straight. QAnon is a massive group of concerned U.S. citizens who believe that President Trump is in the White House with a grand, secretive plan to roust out pedophiles in the country and stop them.
Oh, the whole world, the global.
Oh, he's going to stop pedophiles globally?
Global human trafficking network.
Okay, sex trafficking, human trafficking, human sex trafficking, blah, blah, blah. So QAnoners believe that President Trump and other members of his group are involved in a great conspiracy to uncover and bring to justice pedophiles and human traffickers.
Human traffickers, yes. That's the premise.
And that's been going on for years.
And it's been going on since the election. This whole thing started by somebody named Q, who's supposed to be in the deep state and is our man in the deep state is telling us what's going down. And the language and the way the whole QAnon thing is done, it's like a video game. It's like a choose your own adventure game.
It's very appealing.
The spy guy says some vague stuff, and then all the QAnon fans then extrapolate what that could mean. And then sometimes they're right, and sometimes they're wrong. But it's like a.
But sometimes when you're right, it's kind of.
It's a Pokemon game.
Yeah.
And they're just collecting all the information. And they're on the outside of the mainstream news, and they feel like they're a part of a secret club.
It's a treasure hunt. It's the
Goonies. Periodically, Trump makes QAnon nods in his tweets.
Which makes everybody feel like, oh, it's really happening.
It's really happening, right?
And so, like, super condensed version, I think we as humans who maybe not be participating in QAnon need to be aware that anytime groups like this rise up, there's a reason. When you see people burning buildings in Minneapolis, there is a reason. People don't do bad things for quote-unquote bad things for no reason. People don't do violent things for no reason. QAnon exists for a reason, and that is because a lot of people have been abused and taken advantage of and have lost loved ones to human trafficking. And it's a major issue globally that we should be addressing and taking care of. And the QAnoners feel like they are part of solving that problem.
They get to be, it's a choose your own adventure where they get to be a part of it. They get to be, they're not just passively consuming as much as they're active, like, junior detectives.
And it would be easy to wager that many of the people who are participating in the QAnon hunt are people who have been abused and don't have any other pathway for finding justice.
That's speculation, and I don't think it's a stretch.
Yes.
You know.
It's speculation, and I don't think it's a stretch. Groups like this don't rise up for no reason.
No.
So recently, Twitter banned over 7,000 QAnon accounts, which I think is very interesting. And I think it's a largely political move, and it starts making me wonder, like, okay, who's pulling the strings of Twitter? Because Twitter has been a largely open source platform of users sharing information with users, and it has been largely uninfluenced by the algorithm the way that Facebook is, where you really only see things on Facebook that keep you on Facebook.
Right.
You may have 1,200 friends, but you only see the same 70 friends who say the same things that you like to see in the world, or things that make you angry, or whatever keeps you online.
Right. That keeps you engaged.
Anything that keeps you on Facebook is what Facebook's going to tell you. But Twitter, you can actually very easily find minute by minute information on a variety of topics worldwide. And so I think it's really interesting that
the
Twitter
hashtag
has
search is more
super useful
over there. Yeah.
And so they banned a bunch of QAnon accounts, which is censorship. And I think I categorically don't agree with censorship. I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's constructive. And it has inflamed the QAnon group in the US because they've all gone and looked at the Google stats. Anytime something gets banned, people want to know about it more.
People want to know about it.
So is this the quote-unquote bad guys trying to crush the people who are trying to stop the pedophiles? Or is this a play by QAnoners deep inside Twitter who know that if we ban QAnon, people are going to want to know what's being kept from us?
Is that the speculation going on?
Mm-hmm.
Right, because they're a part of the vast conspiracy to save the children.
So this conversation has been going on in the U.S. People have always been fighting against human trafficking and specifically child sex trafficking. But
you become aware of it, yeah.
Yeah, you're like, that's bad. But there are a lot of people in the U.S. who've been part of QAnon, especially for like the last 4 years of President Trump's presidency, because stories arose that made them feel like he was really going to do it, that his perceived buffoonery or non-politicalness was a smokescreen to keep people off his trail while he rousted the bad guys for Nottingham, basically. And so as people are being more and more vocal about this child sex trafficking thing, which has been going on for a while, it's causing people who are part of the current uprising of Black Lives Matter to feel like you're only talking about save the children because you don't want to talk about save the black people. And I think it's
uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. There's a lot of really horrible stuff going on the planet, and it would be really great if with the magic of the internet we could all find a way to unify and work on problem A and then work on problem B and then work on problem C, but also all the problems are interconnected.
There's a lot of denial by the sort of upper, the flyover states, the folks that don't have a lot of, that don't know the urban story of what it's like to be a minority in an urban environment and suffer systemic racism. People who've never experienced that don't know it's a problem. These protests are making the problem are showing the problem in their living room. Now they haven't had that
They're
experience.
seeing the result of the problem. They're like, why are people burning things? And I'm like, because they've been hurt.
Right, so because I think this is the creeping discomfort that comes in, is that it's becoming more and more apparent. The term white privilege was new, and then it was exhausted. It got to the point where people talked about white privilege, and then
it just doesn't even mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything anymore because people are like, well, I'm just a poor white person. I don't have any privilege. But as you start to understand, it's not a matter of white privilege being your specific story.
You're not getting bonuses for being white.
Your specific story has a different arc than somebody who's being systemically prejudiced.
For instance, in the current social structures of the U.S., neither of us has financial privilege, but we do know people and have friends who do have financial privilege. Both of us have white privilege in that we're not going to get hurt because of our skin but we also know people who don't have white privilege, as in they don't have white skin, and so they are in danger of being hurt or discriminated against just because of the skin they were born with.
Right.
You have male privilege, and I don't have male privilege.
Right.
I have educational privilege because, you know, like there are a lot of kinds of privilege.
Yeah. And people are having to face that. And I think as this drumbeat of systemic racism,
people treat you differently at the hardware store than they treat me.
Yes, exactly.
And that's not something you asked for.
What can I do for you, little lady?
Yeah.
You gonna do something handy around
Well,
the house?
aren't you serious with that question?
Yeah.
I will punch you in your face.
So people are getting hip whether they want to or not. And I think it's causing people to want to buckle down a little bit of like, they're starting to realize,
I'm not a bad person.
Yeah, right. It goes from like, I didn't do anything to like, really, I'm not a bad person to like, this is unraveling.
Mm-hmm.
And what does it mean for me?
Yeah. Am I in danger?
Am I in danger because I'm white?
A lot of my conservative Christian friends are talking about this. In their minds, it's a joke to defund the police right now. They're like, how is a less funded police system going to stop rioters and looters like what we're seeing on the news if they can't even stop the ones that we have now with all the money they have now? They need more money and more guns.
Mm-hmm.
Because my friends, who are largely conservative or Christian, don't know that the rioters and the looters and the protesters are doing that in reaction to grievances. They didn't just wake up and decide to go mess up the country.
Really?
That's what a lot of Christian people think, is that sometimes people just do bad things for no reason.
You would think they would be excited. They're waiting for the end times.
So anyway, we were in Portland over the weekend, and we briefly attended a protest. And in about 5 minutes, we're going to sign off and let DJ Timothy take Timothy. He's a new KBMF DJ. I've only met him once. He's going to be covering for Big Dan C tonight from 6 to 8 p.m. So stay tuned for that.
Apparently, he has a very nice radio voice.
Right, very deep voice. So that's going to be exciting. Gotta love the good radio voices. So there are some hashtags arising out of Portland, which is hashtag Wall of Moms and hashtag PDX Dad Pod. And PDX is the abbreviation for Portland.
Right.
And Dad Pod, I think, is a nice play on Dad Bod. There's also hashtag Fathers Against Fascism.
Right, so we went down and saw a daytime event where there was some rabble-rousing, so lady on a microphone, basically talking to the people who've been there for the last 56 days, 57 days, telling them to take care of themselves, make sure they drink some water, get some rest. You don't have to protest every day. Save yourself for the long haul. Don't be a martyr. Don't burn yourself out. Be aware of your environment. You know, just some really good breakdown.
You don't have to talk to the police.
It's a new generation trying to figure out if they can do better than the previous generations in overthrowing the monster.
Mm-hmm.
And
they've been really organized. They've been doing I mean, it was so amazing for me. I've participated in a lot of passionate group activities growing up evangelical Christian.
Yeah, that's very passionate stuff.
Every Sunday we would all get together and do the same thing passionately.
Yeah.
And so I have a little PTSD around when I feel my feelings rise up.
Groupthink.
Everybody's like, no justice, no peace, no justice, no peace. And I start being like, you know, like reciting the Apostles' Creed in the back of my mind. Like, and so like I feel as though I'm going to have to do some more work with myself to be able to enjoy another kind of groupthink that's a groupthink that I've chosen to be passionate about.
Right.
But it was really amazing to see everybody joining the protest and taking on roles that suited them. This is our dream for society, is not that we should keep grocery checkers from being automated so that people can have jobs, but that all grocery checkers should be automated, except for that one guy that actually really does like checking out groceries. Mm-hmm. We should all be doing the things that we love, and our society would be so much more thriving and rich. And so we got to this protest, and there's the de-escalation team, which isn't like people who the authorities have said are the de-escalation team. It's a woman that works out at the gym 3 times a week. And it's a guy who has a bike and a whole bunch of bike protective gear. And it's a D&D person who knows how to build a shield that's not just going to fall over and hit him in the face.
Right.
And so you've got this team, and like somebody with a husky. Like there you've got this team of people who are bringing their various skills to the table, and something in them rose up to say, when an MFer comes around the corner screaming about the end times and trying to start a fight during this protest, they run through the crowd to that guy and just non-violently push him out of the crowd.
Right.
They're not engaging.
It was like a little D&D superhero group.
Oh, that's what I would do. Just want to put my hair in a bun and wear arm guards and protect people.
Right, so people are finding their places. Like I said, it's been going on almost 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like what I saw in Seattle was very different than what I saw. Like the Seattle thing was a lot of different forces converging in an arts district.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm seeing in Portland is a drumbeat of some folks that are very focused on systemic racism, and
we're going to keep the conversation going until you notice.
And they're in the front of the federal building.
Yeah, and they painted the federal building.
And they're the feds are upset that the building got some spray paint on it, so now they're kidnapping people and terrorizing them.
Unmarked vehicles.
Apparently, the people who were rounded up, they were interviewed and interrogated and then just kicked out of the van. They weren't ever processed. So, but you didn't hear the story.
There was no legal process, and then they were also not murdered.
They weren't murdered, right?
But there was also no legal process.
So a lot of the people who are really frightened about what's going on, like Trump's people kidnapping people, that's some behavior that we shouldn't be tolerating.
Mm-hmm.
But we also still don't even know the story of what's going on.
We have to be aware that it's a scare tactic.
And we're spreading memes around things that we don't know anything about.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I have started going to Twitter. So like when I find out what's going on with the wall of moms, that I just hit that hashtag, and then I start finding people who
That's how people share news.
Right. I've been finding the hashtags on Twitter and finding out there's some people who are just doing food.
Yeah.
They're just doing food for people who are at the protest, and they're raising money for making food for people at the protest. And then the people who are interacting with them are people who are deeply involved in the struggle. So it's a way to sort of get in on the club and find out from the ground floor of what's happening at a place, rather than waiting for some corporate newspaper article to tell you what happened in Portland.
Right. You can go
There's other ways to find out your information.
Twitter and follow hashtags and find out photos and videos on the ground, independent journalism of what is really going on. We have to sign off and hand the radio over to Timothy from 6 to 8. He's covering Big Dan C's audio hallucinations. Thank you so much to everybody that tuned in this afternoon. If you want to know, you could know.
If you want to know what's going on, you could know what's going on.
You can Google what is a virus, what is bacteria, and how does the immune system work. And then you can also go to Twitter and you can search for hashtag Wall of Moms and hashtag Fathers Against Fascism, and you will be able to find news about straight white dads showing up with leaf blowers to protect people who are fighting for minority rights.
Or you can just keep spanking people because they have different memes than you. I know people get off on that.
Gosh, the number of people sharing memes on the internet is completely delegitimizing people who are also learning things from the internet.
Why?
You know, there's this,
the internet.
Everybody thinks they're an expert these days.
Yeah, that's where all the bad information comes from, the internet.
If you wanted to know, you could know.
Yeah, if you wanted to know, you could know. Thanks for listening to our show. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We're going to be back next Sunday from 4 to 6. Stay tuned.
You can join the Post-Orthodoxy conversation by catching one of our live streams on Facebook, Twitch, You can join the Post-Orthodoxy conversation by catching one of our live streams on Facebook, Twitch, or YouTube. If you'd like to connect with us online, we can be found on Instagram at Post-Orthodoxy, on Twitter and Facebook